about that. If that happened, it sure would make certain that all of us believed in the Second Amendment. But I do not understand how people think that we can do that to other countries and not have the same reaction. We should never take it casually that we're going to go and put anti-ballistic missiles, which it looks like they may back off. Instead of a few big ones, they're going to put many little ones. But anti-ballistic missiles in Europe right on the border of Russia because of, the Iranian threat. That is bogus, let me tell you. But what if the Russians came in Canada or in Mexico and put anti-ballistic missiles? Let's say in Mexico, because I can make an appropriate analogy. The Russians are putting anti-ballistic missiles in Mexico because they're afraid the Americans will launch missiles and hit Venezuela. So we're protecting Venezuela. I mean, we wouldn't accept that. I mean, we would be infuriated, and yet that's what we do. The idea that we have to use force and intimidations to get along with people is ridiculous. It makes it more difficult. We should have, I like the idea of trade. I like the idea of travel. I like the idea of diplomacy. I don't like the idea of intimidation and force and threatening people. Do it our way or we'll bomb you. If you do it our way, we'll give you money. If you don't do it our way, we'll bomb you. There has to be a better way. Personal liberty is under attack. Under war times, it's always worse because everybody is frightened, and therefore you have to give up your liberties because you have to be patriotic. But the patriot is said, today the patriot is considered to be the one that obeys and is obedient and doesn't question the government. I say the good patriot sticks with the people and questions the government. Most everything that we do, we approach with an authoritarian attitude. You can solve problems through authoritarianism or through voluntarism. In a free country, it's supposed to be voluntary. We recognize the right of the individual, the right to enter into contracts, the right for the obligation of the government to give us an honest money, and you work out our problems. That's what we're supposed to do. But today, it's all through the force of a gun. Now, I, of course, believe strongly in the Second Amendment, but I do believe in the restraint of the use of guns, and that is the government bureaucrats. They don't deserve to have the gun. There's approximately 100,000 federal employees that carry a gun to enforce the laws. They're getting frightened about what's happening in this country. But the whole thing is they're not supposed to have any federal policemen. The police are supposed to be local. They're supposed to be here in our communities. But the wars here at home are also very detrimental to our liberty. The one war that I've talked out against for so long and we have to continue to work on, and that is the drug war. We need to end the drug war. Isn't it amazing that we accept the idea that you have a perfectly good right to deal with your own salvation and what you believe in religious matters? You're also generally allowed to read the literature and intellectual literature and the right of the free press. But with political correctness on the horizon, sometimes that is even curtailed. But when it comes to spiritual values and intellectual matters, we accept a relative amount of freedom. But what happens when it comes to your own body? Your own body is the government is going to tell you everything. Tell you what you can smoke and drink and eat and everything else. I would say that in a free society, you should have the responsibility to make your own decision what is best for you. But if you make mistakes, you can't crawl to your government and go to your neighbor to get bailed out. Because as a physician and as a parent and a grandparent, I know the dangers of drugs, and I know we should be very, very careful with drugs. But also, as a physician, I know that there's more people abused and more people die by prescription drugs than they do by the illegal drugs. But we also should put more emphasis, and I gave a 5-minute speech the other day on medical care, and making a point which isn't generally made in Washington, that the medical profession 100 years ago took us away from homeopathic medicine and said only allopathic medicine, routine medicine. But any natural cures, they more or less closed these schools down. They didn't want the competition, and they limited the number of medical schools, and this was part in collusion with the AMA. The doctor organizations also promoted this. But what we're doing now is it's getting so that they intimidate you if you want to look for natural causes. I have introduced a bill which I thought at the time wasn't very much, but all of a sudden I found out that people cared about this. You know, there are restraints in allowing people to drink raw milk. And I think if you want to drink raw milk, you ought to have the right to drink raw milk. And I don't want the federal government nor the WTO controlling our vitamins and nutritional products, because they may give you better health than some of the conventional methods that we have today. You know, I have a little bumper sticker in my office. You may have seen it on the internet that sort of summarizes the philosophy. It merely says, "Don't steal, the government hates competition." All welfare redistribution is done by theft, and yet the side that argues the case gets the moral high ground, and that's what we have to stop. We have to learn to understand how the market works and why freedom is so valuable to us, and that it is the only humanitarian system that we should argue for, because it was the free market and freedom and industrial revolution that actually was able to eliminate famine and poverty. And yet we are losing the argument. Conservatives and libertarians do not give a good case and say that if you truly care about your fellow man, what you ought to do is promote liberty and limited government, and more people will be taken care of better than any other way. Freedom of choice is very important, and pro-choice doesn't mean that in all areas. It's not how it's conventionally used. Freedom of choice means that you have freedom to use your life as you choose. You should have a right to your life. We do. We get a right to our life, and we have a right to our liberty. But it doesn't come from our government. It comes from our Creator, and not government, and they shouldn't be able to take it from us. And if we have those rights, right to life and right to liberty, we ought to have the right to keep what we earn, which means there would be no income tax. Now, H.L. Mencken said that, and maybe there are some of you in this crowd, he said the most dangerous person in the world is the individual who thinks things out for himself. And I think that's what the Campaign Liberty has done. It's brought people together who have been thinking things out for themselves, because I didn't convert the people all of a sudden. I hope I encouraged a few now and then. But I think there has been a remnant. There has not just been the college kids and the young kids. There's been a remnant of people that knew about this, just searching and waiting to hear something because they wanted to come together, and we had an excuse for it to come together. But now, not only do we come together and have a good time and we're energized, but we also are coming together because we can see that if we continue this,